Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. I am so thrilled you're here today because we're going to dive into something that literally every single one of us relies on, yet we rarely ever think about what happens when it's gone. We are looking at the terrifying biological ticking clock of what happens to our bodies when we just stop sleeping. It's essentially a rapid descending staircase of biological failures, and honestly, understanding it gives us this absolutely incredible window into how our brains actually function. So, let's get into it.
Okay, so here's our hour-by-hour roadmap for this descent. We'll start with the first 24 hours, move into when hallucinations begin, cross over into literal torture, explore the total break from reality, and wrap up with the steep cost of recovery.
And to guide us, we have these very distinct checkpoints ahead. We're looking at 18 hours, 24 hours, 36, 48, 72, and finally 96 hours and beyond. What you're going to see is how the tension really builds across this timeline. I mean, what starts off as just feeling a little groggy cascades extremely quickly into a total system failure.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the first 24 hours.
Now, you've probably experienced pulling an all-nighter, right? Maybe traveling across time zones, or just dealing with a bad bout of insomnia. But we really need to reframe how we think about that. Staying awake for just 18 hours leaves you with an impairment equivalent to a blood alcohol content of 0.05. Seriously, your brain is operating as if you've had 3 or 4 drinks in just 2 hours, even if all you've been doing is chugging coffee. It's wild!
But if you push past that and you make it to a full 24 hours awake, your blood alcohol equivalence jumps to 0.1%. And just to put that into perspective, that is higher than the legal driving limit in most places. Without drinking a single drop of alcohol, a 24-hour period without sleep makes you a severe liability behind the wheel.
So why does that 0.1% equivalence make you so deeply impaired? Well, it's actually a mechanical breakdown. You start experiencing intense brain fogginess, your coordination goes out the window, and you might even get blurry or double vision. And the reason for this is entirely neurological. Your brain cells are literally slowing down their communication with one another. It's like your brain's internal Wi-Fi network is just lagging.
Which brings us right into Section 2, when hallucinations begin. We are now at 36 hours awake.
At a day and a half without rest, that simple tiredness morphs into some pretty alarming psychological symptoms. Your brain is getting so exhausted that you start experiencing what are called microsleeps. These are brief, 30-second periods of sleep. And the really terrifying part? You probably won't even notice them happening. It is quite literally your brain forcefully shutting itself down for a hard reboot. Exceptionally dangerous if you happen to be driving. And right alongside those dangerous microsleeps, your body's immunity to fight off illnesses has now significantly dropped. This weakened, totally exhausted state starts playing horrifying tricks on your senses. You're going to start experiencing visual and auditory hallucinations. Visual distortions are the most common. Like, you might look at a totally normal water bottle and suddenly see it doubling in size or, moving all on its own. But it goes way beyond just your eyes. You could clearly hear your name being called in a totally empty room or vividly feel a physical tap on your shoulder when absolutely no one is there. Spooky, right?
Let's move on to Section 3, crossing into literal torture. We are hitting the 48-hour mark here.
As we move past those early hallucinations, things take a very, very dark turn. We are no longer talking about simple fatigue anymore. At 48 hours, extreme sleep deprivation is considered literal torture by the United Nations. In fact, studying it on human subjects is prohibited by law in most countries. And honestly, that fact alone tells you everything you need to know about just how destructive this is to human biology.
Because at this intense level of exhaustion, you actually begin losing your grip on reality, and it leads to a psychological phenomenon called depersonalization. This is the truly terrifying feeling that reality itself is just slipping away. It often brings on massive waves of extreme anxiety and stress, and it can even trigger full-blown out-of-body experiences. You are essentially experiencing a total loss of control over your own mind, as your brain just struggles to process basic existence.
Moving into Section 4, total break from reality. This is the 72 to 96 hour window.
This massive loss of control really brings us to the climax of our descent. At 72 hours, that's 3 full days without sleep, you are facing a profound mental deficit. Basic human functions become completely overwhelming. Something as simple as getting dressed or going to the kitchen to find a snack feels like an impossible puzzle to figure out.
And this is accompanied by a total loss of emotional regulation. You can basically no longer process or control how you feel about anything.
And this deficit builds into an absolutely fascinating medical anomaly. Those earlier visual distortions, they evolve into highly complex, fully shaped images. In historical studies, participants actually reported a shared hallucination known as the hat phenomenon. It's this distinct, very real physical feeling of pressure around the head, exactly as if you were wearing a tight hat. And experiencing that completely opens the door for deep paranoia and sudden, intense depression.
By the time you push to 96 hours, you hit full sleep deprivation psychosis. It is a total snap from the real world. To really anchor just how intensely this shatters the human psyche, consider this incredibly dark historical fact. Historically, this specific state of psychosis was intentionally triggered in women who were accused of being witches, specifically to force these rambling, nonsensical confessions. The brain literally breaks its connection to truth, and it will confess to completely fabricated delusions just to seek an end to the physical suffering.
And if this cycle isn't broken by the 5th day, we start looking at a very grim progression. Step 1, your mental health declines sharply, cementing those terrifying delusions as absolute reality. Step 2, the brain fundamentally stops functioning properly. And because the brain controls the body, we immediately hit Step 3, organ failure begins. Finally, Step 4, in rare cases, this ultimate trajectory results in death.
Which brings us to our final part, Section 5, the steep cost of recovery.
Now, thankfully, very few people ever reach those absolute extremes. But even regular, ongoing sleep deprivation, the kind a lot of us deal with, leaves behind lingering physical damage. Chronic lack of sleep leads to some serious long-term health issues. We're talking unexplained weight gain, sudden flare-ups of acne, persistent headaches, and dangerously high blood pressure. Your body absolutely keeps the score of every single hour you steal from it.
But honestly, here is the most daunting math of all. It can take weeks to get your system back on track. Why? Because your body needs 4 full days to recover from losing just a single hour of sleep. 4 days, 1 hour lost, means you've just created a 4-day biological debt to fully reset your system.
So, this leads us to the absolute most practical takeaway from all this data. The ultimate solution here is to avoid the recovery period entirely. The only real sustainable strategy is prevention, simply by getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep every single night in the first place. You can't easily hack your way out of sleep debt once you're in it. You just have to prevent the debt from accumulating altogether.
Which leaves us with this provocative thought to end on today. Knowing what we know now about the brain slowing down, the hallucinations, the extreme physical toll on the body, and that staggering math of recovery, is that extra hour of late-night scrolling really, truly worth a 4-day biological debt? I'll let you think about that tonight. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I sincerely hope you all get some well-deserved rest. See you next time.